Right.
And so a lot of people are saying, oh, it's lazy to teach people on their knees, get
Yeah, it is lazy.
typically they've set it up that way from the beginning, and
Right.
it's a luxury to be able to do that.
Right.
It's a luxury to do. It's the way agencies want you to teach the course. It's not a, oh, you guys are being fancy here by teaching buoyancy first. Oh, you swanky folk. Hi divers, and welcome back to another scuba diving reaction video. Today's is a bit of a different video though, because we're doing a follow-up to this video. If you didn't see the previous video, you can click the link now to go watch that. I'll give you a quick summary. Essentially, we watched this video by Sweetwater Scuba, who's an Instagram influencer for the scuba diving niche, and he was promoting some less than ideal behaviour. Yeah. I won't go into it too much. If you want to get more details, just watch that previous video. And at the end of the video, I thought that was going to be it, but then the comment section kind of had this weird thing how people recognised him for kneeling down when teaching scuba diving. Strange. Now, for any non-divers or new divers who might not be familiar to why this is a problem or what this is all about, basically, teaching scuba diving in pools by kneeling down is a very old-fashioned and outdated teaching method. Typically, this is frowned upon in the scuba diving industry nowadays because it teaches bad buoyancy control, promotes touching the bottom, which obviously we don't want to do as divers, and just all around makes students worse divers by the time they finish the course, which we don't obviously want. So I'm kind of not sure what to think about this. So I think I found the video. I did my quick gloss over by moving my mouse along the bottom to see it, and I can see divers touching the bottom in the clips. So I think I found the video. So we're going to see what it's going to be. It's obviously a blind reaction. I'm hopeful that Kenny maybe have just misspoken, or maybe people have taken it out of context and misinterpreted it. But we're going to have a look, going to see if it is the case, if he's promoting if he's promoting yet again a bad diving habit, and we're going to talk about it. And obviously I'm going to share my thoughts being a scuba diving instructor to let you know what I think about this, and if I think this is right, if this is wrong, or if there's some improvements and adjustments that could be made here. With that all said though, let's jump into the video.
My name is Kenny Dial, and I want to welcome you to Season 3
Kenny.
of the Scuba Diving Podcast. Some instructors out there believe strongly, and you should train your open water students from a neutral position first. Even your skills, such as mask clearing, regulator removal, all the basics should be done from a neutral position. You should never do it on their knees.
Just to clarify, by the way, nowadays, and again, this video is only just a year old, so this still is in that nowadays time span. It's not that you should, or some instructors think this way. It's what the agencies are telling you to do that. PADI, SSI, SDI, BSAC. Now, Kenny is NAUI. I'm not too sure about NAUI, but I'm assuming they're on the same page as this. It's like, from my experience, I know PADI at least stopped phases out 5 years ago. This has been around for a long time now. Neutral buoyancy is the way we teach in pools. It's what you're meant to be doing. It's not a some divers situation here, just to clarify that. I try to make it as if like, oh, just some people are saying it. No, it's what the actual agencies who are employing these instructors want you to be doing.
Their argument for that is that it's the law of primacy, which of course...
I have never heard that phrase before. The idea, but for me personally as an instructor, is that it gives them more time to practice. Neutral buoyancy and buoyancy control are the things what new students struggle with the most. It takes them the most time to get their head around, and it comes down to practicing. Like any skill, the more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So if you start them doing this in the pool, get them neutral buoyancy first, they're obviously going to get better. It's not this whole first taught equals first learnt thing. No, it's getting them more practice is the reason I'm all for neutral buoyancy taught in pools. So that when they go to the ocean, they're going to be more familiar with it.
Does weigh heavily on scuba diving, the law of primacy, but they're saying if you learn on your knees, then you never learn buoyancy. Right. And so a lot of people are saying, oh, it's lazy to teach people on their knees, get on
Yeah, it is lazy.
their knees, therein sparks the argument.
Right. This is simple. This is not difficult for me. I coach, I teach. My kids are doing math right now. And we didn't start with calculus. Started with addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. Then you go to algebra, and then you go to trigonometry. In anything, like when I'm teaching my football players, I teach them, for instance, defensive backs. I teach them to go for the near hip. But we're not having them hit the offensive players on the first time they're doing it because they're not going to remember, oh, wait, I got to do the near hip thing. It's the same thing with, let's say, mask removal. If we're having them focus on their buoyancy first, then they're going to forget to do all the stuff they need to do with their mask. Now, I don't have a problem, understand, with people teaching like that. If that's what works for them, I am perfectly
I don't
fine
think
with
there's
that.
nothing wrong.
Okay, I'm going to jump in there. I feel like that's such a jump. Oh, it's like we teach addition and subtraction first, we're going to trigonometry. That's a big jump. Buoyancy control is a basics as well. It's one of the fundamentals. It's one of the basic things you do with scuba diving. So it's not like we're learning super complex diving procedures. I'm not teaching you about nitrox. I'm not teaching you deep procedures or anything like that. That's like the trigonometry of diving. No, we're talking about one of the basic fundamentals, and buoyancy control is one of them. And it's the one what a lot of people, it does take some time to do, so it's good to get them practicing. And the reality of buoyancy control is it's just good breathing technique. Nice, slow, steady breathing, which is going to help you be relaxed and make everything else come easier. Then it's just about finding how much air to add to your BCD via LPI. And afterwards, it's just very, very simple. And then everything else, just, oh yeah, I've got a nice breathing rhythm while doing this. I'm in neutral buoyancy, which you're going to be doing for the rest of your dives. You don't ever really touch the bottom on the actual dives you do in the open water. So it is a weird thing to be teaching kneeling down because, well, although this footage right now is showing them in the open water there, this is quote-unquote confined conditions. So it's pool-like conditions, which are, even in the open water there, because it's like a pool-like scenario, you can technically do that. It's one of the things. However, I'm personally not a fan of this kind of situation here because I just don't want to see divers touching the bottom in like an environment like this. But yeah, the idea that, by teaching buoyancy control, we're jumping too far into the extreme stuff first. Like, no, even if you are going to be like, okay, we're going to do math skills first, we're going to do reg recovery, reg clears. The things what come after that is literal neutral buoyancy, showing them how to find neutral buoyancy, how to do that. It's still one of the very first things to do, so there's nothing wrong by just moving that first, teach them neutral buoyancy, get them in that nice position, get them familiar with that, how to be in trim. Yeah, it just feels like, I don't know, maybe I'm the weird one here. I know these two guys are saying, no, we are doing it right, but for me personally, no, do the neutral buoyancy, get them familiar with it, keep them practicing there throughout the whole pool session, so then when they do finish that pool session, they've had probably, two hours or so now of practicing before going to the open water with it, which is great.
With doing that.
Right, but there's to say that the law of primacy is, they're going to be on their knees the whole time. No, every class I have, we start like that. By the end of the class, nobody is on their knees.
Correct.
Everybody's got good buoyancy. Not perfect buoyancy, but they've got good buoyancy.
Well, I think that's where it's rooted, right? So, and we see this at the aquarium all the time. We see that there is a problem teaching buoyancy.
Yes.
The fact that there was a peak buoyancy class created is a testament to bad training.
Yes, that shouldn't exist. If that exists, then the training isn't being done.
Right, now.
Wait, that... 1 second, give me a second of that. So they are pro teaching on the knees, which makes typically divers to have worse buoyancy by the end of the course. However, they are against peak performance buoyancy, which is then a course provided to correct people's bad buoyancy after doing an open water course. Those ideas don't match. I would get it if they were like, we teach on the knees, thus peak performance buoyancy is needed. It's like an upsell, it's like a crafty salesman tactic. We're going to create the problem to sell the solution situation, and that's why PPB is great. They're going to promote PPB. By the way, that's what the abbreviation for peak performance buoyancy is, PPB, and I'm going to refer to it like that. I'll get that. However, if they want to go the other way, I'm like, no, you should always teach you neutral buoyancy, but we're going to teach you how to get your neutral buoyancy so you get familiar with it. So by the end of the course, you're going to be very comfortable having good buoyancy control. So then PPB is then redundant because you have got it down already after your open water course. I would also understand that completely. But the two ideas right there saying kneeling down, but also PPB is useless, they don't match. They're two complete things. They almost counteract the argument here because the stance is weird. I don't know. Am I taking crazy pills here? Play the clip.
Doesn't anyone notice this? I feel like I'm taking crazy pills!
Jesus.
Now, I've had a lot of people come and say that was the best thing ever for me.
Yeah, but you shouldn't need it.
Correct. The problem is there is a need.
Right.
And
Yeah,
so I
issue.
don't have a problem.
Is that Kenny's idea of neutral buoyancy, by the way? I've seen there's a few clips so far, and it's always like them in this vertical position, not horizontal. This is, if you're in neutral buoyancy, that's one thing, but you should also be practicing good trim as well. This is not in trim, it should be flat. Just about PPB, is it redundant? Just my thoughts on that, by the way. I think it comes down to what the instructor is willing to do. If you look at the bare bones course, which is taught by the agencies, all the things they want to include, it's pretty whatever. But if the instructor wants to do the extra mile, teach different finning techniques, teach them different games and stuff underwater, make it really interactive, it can be a really fun adventure dive to do on your advanced open water course. But it comes down to the instructor putting in the extra legwork, and again, it comes down to having a good instructor who's passionate about the sport and wants to make really good divers and wants to put the extra miles in there. Often when I was teaching it, I'd like throw in things like how to do helicopter kicks, how to backfin, things like that, which aren't part of the PPB course, but it just makes people aware of all the things you can do, how to maneuver better in the water. And again, it gets divers thinking, oh, how can I improve? Things I can work to get better at. They might not have it backfilling down by the end of the course, like a lot of people don't get that down by the end of the course, but at least get some kind of start thinking about stuff like that and start working on that on their future dives. But yeah, the bare bones PPB course I think is a bit whatever.
The class, I actually think it's great for a lot of people.
Right.
But it should never have existed in the first place.
There shouldn't be a need for the class.
The need is created.
I think this is a hover, by the way, he's demonstrating, just to point out right now. He's got his fins crossed at the bottom there, so that's kind of a demonstration. A lot of people typically do the Buddha pose instead, so they obviously have their legs crossed and holding the fins, and the way it's showing basically that you're not using your fins to wade or your hands to wade to help your buoyancy, it's all done on your breath. So I think he's demonstrating hover, that's why he's in that position. But ideally, I always think it's better just get them in the flat horizontal position in trim. But I do get, sometimes for demonstration purposes, some instructors like to show the Buddha pose and crossing their legs to show that they're not using their hands.
Very short classes, overworked, underpaid instructors,
Yep.
big time. And finally, people are so focused on all the skills and the academics they're trying to front load in the beginning, they don't work on buoyancy as much as they should. The student shouldn't need a peak buoyancy. That's part of open water training.
Yeah, you're supposed to be signed off on that.
Right, and clearly that's not happening. We see it every night.
Yeah.
But
I will say a lot of people don't get their buoyancy down mastered completely after the open water course. There's usually a few dives afterwards. It's why we always encourage people to do fun dives at post-course, just because they're going to get better with buoyancy control afterwards. However, as I say, if you get them to do neutral buoyancy from the beginning, so the whole pool session they're in neutral buoyancy, they're practicing it, typically they get it a lot faster. It does vary from person. It's like how long's a piece of string and how long they're going to get their head around buoyancy control. But obviously, if you're teaching on these, you're giving them less exposure and less practice. So yeah, the chances are most likely that they are going to leave the course not fully equipped to do their buoyancy control, and then the need for PPB then becomes more apparent. I just don't get how they're making these two arguments, because it's making their arguments redundant by pointing this thing out.
I think that's what's prompting these people to say, I'm going to teach them neutral. And it's a fair thing, and I do believe there's value. It's coming from a good place initially, until they start saying other instructors are lazy and so on.
But they are lazy.
Here's where I think there is some validity to it. With my kids, none of my kids had training wheels on their bike, right? I was talking to a bike shop and they said, look, we can get you training wheels, but honestly, if you put training wheels on, you've got to unlearn some stuff. And so there is something to that. However, that
isn't that going against his argument, though? If you're pointing this out, it goes against his argument, surely. I'm curious to see where he goes with this.
being said, you don't have to unlearn being on the bottom. There's been plenty of times when I've been diving and I've had to be on the bottom, going after a lobster or helping someone out with something or getting a shell.
Inevitably, you're going to be on the bottom for something.
And so it's not...
Wait. I'm just going to correct this. You're not inevitably going to be on the bottom. It's not a common practice. I never touched the bottom after doing my pool sessions back in the day, like 7 years ago when I got first open water certified. I got taught that way, that you did the open water course kneeling down. That's how I did my open water course when I first got exposed to scuba diving. That's the only time I ever really knelt down in doing it. The rest of the time, in open water especially, never touch the bottom. It's really bad practice. Several good reasons exist for why you don't touch the bottom in open water. First one, sensitive bottoms like sandy bottoms. If you turn it up and kick too near the bottom, it's going to turn up the dust and make the visibility go way down. Second reason is it's an actual full of marine life. There could be stuff hiding in the sands, there could be microorganisms, little things like that. Even like rocks can have algae and microorganisms growing on them. Just because you can't see like the big critters on there doesn't mean it's not part of the ecosystem. So you disturbing that and harming it is bad. And you just got to think about multiplying that by lots of divers keep going to the same dive sites, having this bad practice of touching the bottom over and over again. We slowly, generations later, will be ruining these dive sites for the future. It's not a good habit. You should not be touching the bottom. I can't believe they're actually saying, oh yeah, we're going to eventually touch the bottom. So we're getting you practicing for that right now from us kneeling you down. That's completely the wrong argument. I've never heard someone justify it like, oh yeah, you will be touching the bottom in the open water. No. That's why we want neutral buoyancy. You want to be hovering. You want to be above that bottom and staying away from it. I'm shocked to see him say that.
It's not a skill you have to unlearn in order to do buoyancy. They're both skills. It's not really a skill being on the bottom, but it's not something you have to unlearn.
I was just about to say, that's a weird take. So it's a skillful thing to be on the bottom. No, it's the opposite.
Training wheels. Training wheels you literally have to unlearn because you don't learn to balance, and instead you learn to trust the training wheels. But that's not the same thing
It's
as...
touch the bottom.
Right. I think it's...
See, you can see it right there in the clip. I'm just going to move the mouse so you can see it. That's all turned up now because he's touching the bottom again. It's just a complete lack of awareness, because I get goofing around with pal, have a laugh sort of thing. I think that was all fun. But I could see him drifting towards the bottom again. It's just a bad buoyancy control situation. Not to criticise Kenny as a diver here, I think he got distracted by camera. It's commonly done. Cameras are people's worst enemies. It makes people bad divers because they lose their spatial awareness. They get obsessed of how they're looking on camera, and they touch the bottom and be a bit goofy here. And I think this is bad.
The law of primacy at a little...
I have not heard the law of primacy before, and I've heard it so many times in this one video. I don't think that's the argument.
Strong of the letter of the law, so to speak.
Yeah.
It's taking it a little too literally. Like no one goes and says, hey, I know we're doing a drift dive on the wall, the Santa Rosa wall in Cozumel, and the bottom's 1,000 feet down.
Right.
But I need to clear my mass, so I need to find a bottom to get on my
Right,
knees.
yeah, nobody's
does that. Saying that.
No, nobody's saying that.
Yeah, and so I understand their frustration. We deal with it regularly.
I get the frustration.
But the ones that can do that, typically they've set it up that way from the beginning, and it's a luxury to be able to do that.
Right.
It's a luxury to do. It's the way agencies want you to teach the course. It's not you guys are being fancy here by teaching neutral buoyancy first. Oh, you swanky folk. No, it's the way, it's a basics way you're meant to be teaching it. And I'm pretty sure if you speak to agencies now and dive centres now who've employed this, it's reason why we've changed it this way because it makes better students. It's not you're trying to be fancy here, trying to teach it that way, or trying to be snooty about it. It produces better divers. That is what you want. When you are teaching courses, we want to make the best divers possible, the safest divers possible, and make sure they nail their buoyancy control so that they leave the course with confidence, or obviously in a position where they're going to be a lot better than they would have been if you taught them on their knees at the start of the course for a while. It's a lot better. It's not about being snobbery or whatnot. It's been proven now. People really have shown it that it's a better way to teach. And on your knees, it's outdated, and it's something that should be phased out.
Need a lot more time.
Not every student is going to... There are certain students who just take to it like a fish to water. Other students need more time, and they need to work on the individual skills and put them together.
They're so focused here, you have to eliminate all the other distractions, or I've had many would not have been able to get it if we didn't just focus on that.
Well, they usually end up on the
mask.
surface.
Right.
If they're
the bottom,
buoyant,
it's the
yeah,
surface.
they end up on the surface, and that can be dangerous because, especially if you're in like a 15-foot pool or something, what we were talking before.
Why are you taking them down to 5 meters? 15 foot by the way, but 5 meters. Why are you taking them that deep then if you still haven't got them the basics down? You start shallower, get the neutral buoyancy sorted there. It's hard actually in the shallower you are as well, so it's really good to do that. But it just gets them comfortable breathing. You want to make sure they're breathing correctly first, get their breathing nice and steady. That's what buoyancy control is with neutral buoyancy. And once they get comfortable, feel happy with that, feel comfortable with that situation, feel in the natural position, because some people, believe it or not, will find kneeling down really awkward. I've seen it with some people trying to get them to do the kneeling down, and they're falling forwards, they're falling backwards, they're falling side to side. The reason is scuba equipment's not made for us to kneel down. Sometimes as well, the tank will hit the bottom of the pool and break the tiles if you have it down. Obviously, you have the fender benders on the bottom of the tanks to avoid that, but typically you avoid it completely as well if you just have them in a flat, horizontal position. It just feels really weird to me that they're pushing this like, it's dangerous if you try and teach neutral buoyancy first. No, it's literally just about having good, steady breathing. Get them really happy, feeling very relaxed, and then you can go on to the skills afterwards. It's literally just having a nice, steady flow of breathing. So the whole idea that, they're going to freak out with the mask and stuff like that, well, don't take them down to 5 meters then, where you think they might hold their breath and bolt to the surface. Do that in the shallows still. Like, it feels weird to take someone down to, firstly, luxurious by the way, to have a 5 meter pool deep to do it in. I didn't always have that when I was teaching. But especially if you're going to do these sort of things, yeah, you do it at kind of comfortable levels. And one of the first things, in my opinion, is get the breathing sorted. Then you go on to math skills, etc., etc. It's not like, we're leaving this super late and then get them to go super deep and then we're going to suddenly throw these skills in, which we don't know how they're going to handle it. It's still done slowly, but it's not like it's a bad thing to start them with neutral buoyancy. It's actually a great thing because it gets them into that good habit and not showing them something that's going to eventually be redundant. Kneeling down becomes redundant very, very fast. So why start them on this thing what they might not even find comfortable in the first place?
If they're holding their breath because their mask is off and all, then you are in a dangerous situation. And so
This is why you really nail it into them, that don't hold your breath. You really, really nail it in there. You have it multiple times, you get them to repeat it back to you before you've got into the water, that you don't want them to hold a breath. And that's why, again, neutral buoyancy teaching it first, but it's teaching about breathing. It's a good idea because it makes them realise, yeah, we don't need to hold our breaths.
Having them start on the bottom, basically so that they can get their mask and they're comfortable with that, then do the buoyancy, and then have them do it. Right. And if they can do it while they're neutrally buoyant, and they should be able to do it while they're neutrally buoyant.
By the end.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah, by the end, absolutely.
That's where a lot of instructors are dropping the ball,
right.
And that's what's triggering the...
I was going to point out, by the way, his gear is all hanging loose in this footage. So I don't know if he's trying to promote this as like, oh, look at how good my training is. But this kind of is like, for training footage, I wouldn't be recording this and posting this online. That SPG is hanging loose. The strap there, strap's okay, I guess, for a weight belt because it's like for quick release. It needs to be accessible. But then SPG, I don't know. It's got a clip on it, but it's hanging a bit loose. I'd try and streamline that a bit more by probably reducing that extension so that he has it closer to his body. But yeah, that SPG hanging that loose is kind of bothering me a bit there.
People that are for it.
Correct.
I think for
I think that's reasonable.
And I've also noticed the majority I've seen, they're very good. They're tech divers. They usually do like law enforcement or military or something like that. The majority, not all. Therein, I think, lies the little bit of difference because I've seen a lot of instructors for like fire departments and for police. You're training somebody that's typically a lot more confident than the people off the street that you do in a shop. We're
right.
doing kids that don't want to be there, but the dad's making them, and now we just got to deal with it. The spout.
Okay, off topic kind of thing here, in bringing up about kids who don't want to be there, that is literally the quote-unquote worst situation to be in there. The kids that come there to dive centres who want to be taught are sometimes the best students because they're just so happy to be there, so excited. It's not like school, they're literally like, they want to be there, so they're super like sponges who just take in all the information. The opposite side of the kid who doesn't want to be there, the dad's forcing them to be there, they usually are the worst students because they just don't want to be there. You can see it in the kids' face, they're not happy about it. And just for parents who are like thinking about taking their kids scuba diving, and just if you are a parent watching this who's thinking about taking his kids scuba diving, have the conversation with kids. Do you want to do this? Can you have a really fun time? Try and make it sound exciting for them. Do promote it, but don't be too pushy if they say no or be too disheartened. This is speaking from my own experience from my dad, who was an avid cycler. He's one of the guys who could have gone pro, but he really wanted me to learn to ride a bike, and he pushed on me so hard that I just hate riding my bike. I can ride a bike by the end of it, sure, but do I do it for fun nowadays? No, because I just got forced on it too much. And you see it with the scuba diving industry where kids get forced into it and they just end up resenting the sport and not being keen on it because it's forced on too heavily. Also, just another reminder, if you are one of those dads taking the kids scuba diving and whatnot, do not backseat on the course. It's better just leave a kid with the instructor because it's the worst thing ever as an instructor to have someone backseating, being like, you're teaching the kids, next minute the dad's like, no, this is how you do it, and teaching them something else. Next minute they're arguing with the kid because they're not doing it right and all these silly things. And the kid doesn't know who to listen to, the instructor or the dad. I know I've worked at some dive centres that have a rule that parents are not allowed to sit in on the courses for that reason. It's really hard for instructors to teach that way. But as I say, typically if a kid does not want to be there, it's not the most enjoyable experience for them, so I would never push it. The fact he's saying it's a common occurrence for him is a bit weird, but I would just say, just as a kind of rule of thumb, ideally don't be that parent. Make sure it's the kid who wants to be there rather than you are forcing it on them, because they're never going to enjoy it if you are forcing it on them.
Dragged in there that has no water comfort whatsoever.
Right.
You're not going to get them neutral at first.
If someone is getting trained to be on the sheriff's dive team, they want to be there and they're pumped to be there.
They're typically...
That's what I was saying. If people want to be there, they're going to be good. If they don't want to be there, you can see why. And that kind of gives me the vibe as well, because from my experience, people I've been teaching or whatnot, they want to be there. If people are like there because they don't want to be there, that seems like a red flag. Maybe you've been very pushy salesman and kind of force these DSD tri-divers into doing the open water course who don't really want to be there. They probably weren't planning to do this. I don't know. It gives me kind of weird vibes that you have people who don't want to be there on your courses. That seems strange to me. People I've always talked are people who are excited to be there. Maybe a bit nervous. That's completely fine. Maybe a bit nervous and excited. It's completely fine. You are doing something really weird by going deep underwater. That's something we don't naturally do as human beings. So it's completely fine to be nervous, but not wanting to be there. Bit red flaggish fact that's a common occurrence.
Physically fit or
Right.
more fit.
Yeah.
And they're already at a certain age and a certain confidence and usually have already done some stuff already.
Correct.
That's just a big difference I'm seeing that a lot of people don't really factor into that.
Right.
Anyway, so what's your position in one sentence on you should teach everyone from the beginning from a neutrally buoyant position?
Which quote unquote is what the agencies want you to do.
In one sentence, I'd say that if you can do it, great. but there is absolutely nothing wrong with teaching someone on their knees as long as by the end of the class, you have them neutrally buoyant.
Bingo. Totally agree. Couldn't have said it better myself.
I know.
Yeah, that was a good one. All right.
I don't agree with that. As I say, yes, by the end of the class you might get them to neutral buoyancy, but are they going to be confident at doing it? Are they going to be as equipped as with it? And also, are they going to be as good as they would have been if you taught them from the get-go to be neutrally buoyant? I don't think they are. I will just say, as I keep pointing out, the agencies want you now to teach it all in neutral buoyancy. They don't want you to be on your knees. This gives you vibes. It's kind of touched on one of the points, but it's kind of like 5 what I call bad emotions, which are kind of tied to this. So it comes down to these 5, which I'm just going to go over now. So first one's laziness, which was covered a bit in the video. The other one that's kind of paired with laziness is greed. Then there's also ignorance. Then there's also incompetence. And then finally there is arrogance. So I'm just going to go over that really quickly. So laziness, we're kind of going over this a little bit. Quote unquote, it's easier for the instructors. They don't have to worry about having to mess around with the students. They don't have to worry about them floating up if they don't get skills or whatnot. They just have them kneeling down, just do the skills, really easy and lazy. And it's just less work for the instructor. This is typically what you see in instructors who have been in the industry a bit too long, from my experience. The ones who obviously they learnt it back in the day 10, 20 years ago. We do it kneeling down. I'm not going to learn this new fancy method. That's just too swanky for me. I'm not going to do that. We're going to teach it this way. This is how I learnt it. This is how you're going to learn it. That's the kind of vibe. It's also people who view it now no longer for passion reasons about their scuba instructor. It's the fact they view it as a job and just want it to be as easy as possible for them because they don't care anymore about it and it's just a paycheck for them, which I think is really unfortunate because, as I say, it typically produces worse divers by the end of the course. Now, greed comes into factor with this one because typically if you have like everyone kneeling down, you probably could fit more people in the group and be more comfortable with that. So instead of just having like, okay, I can teach 4 people adequately and have them really well in neutral buoyancy, we can squeeze in an extra 2 students or so, have them all kneeling down, have these bigger packs, bigger groups and whatnot. And sometimes I can probably cut small corners if they're kneeling down so I can do the course faster, so we can start another course sooner, so I can get more money coming into the dive centre. At the end of the day, it produces, again, worse divers, but it produces more money for you as a dive centre. So this is where it comes in, and that's where laziness and greed kind of go hand in hand, and it's not good. The next one is ignorance. So this is kind of the vibe I was getting a little bit here, that they just don't appreciate how much of a benefit it would be if you actually taught people from neutral buoyancy from the get-go. They're thinking, it's fine, by the end of the course they understand buoyancy control, which, yeah, they probably do from a limited extent, but if they had the course all the time in neutral buoyancy and they kept practicing that and never touching the bottom and thinking about, this is how we should be doing as divers and getting them more familiar with it, it's going to make them a better diver by the end of the course. So it's just not appreciating what's that actually going to do for the divers and how it's going to give them that more practice. Incompetence kind of goes back to the previous point a bit with laziness. So it kind of is that maybe Kenny's not feeling comfortable. He's got his big groups of divers and he's like, oh God, if I have to do it, I'm not going to demonstrate the skill quite as well as I need to. Or maybe that if I have all 6 or 8 people I've got to teach, if they're all floating up or doing all these things for the neutral buoyancy and they're going to be crashing around into each other, I don't think I can handle that, so I'm going to have them on the knees because then I can have it all focused and easier for myself because he's a bit out of his depth. When realistically, if that is you, your instructor who's not comfortable taking on a big group like that, just have a conversation with Dive Centre, be like, hey, can I get some assistance on this course because we've got such a big group, or talk about it. It should not be a reason to skimp out on what you're actually meant to do as a course or make it easier for yourself. You are here to make the best dives possible, and if you don't feel confident enough with a bigger group like that, that's when you need to have a conversation. Maybe have a bit more practice, a bit more training, but it can sometimes come down to that. And the final one is arrogance, and I will say from the last video we looked at with Kenny and to this one, it comes across a little bit like that we know better, this is how it is, changing the wording that, this is what some divers are doing. It's like, no, it's what the agency, the people employing you, the people who allow you to certify these divers want you to be doing. Neutral buoyancy is not an optional, it is something they want you to be doing because it's been proven out. It makes safer and better divers. So it's kind of like, oh no, I know better, trust me, I've been in the industry for so long, I know better. That arrogance definitely could be a part of this, I would not put it past them. But I say, it could be a mixture of all these things as well to a certain extent. Just things got come to mind when I'm watching this right now though, these come to my mind. However, if you have any extra thoughts, put them down in the comments. I'd love to have a conversation. You might agree with me, you might agree with Kenny. I'd love to know what people's stance on this are. But if you enjoyed the video and found it helpful in any way, please give me a like, helps me out a ton, but it'll also help other divers find this video too. And if you did like the video, I think you should check out this video here. I think you're going to really enjoy that one. And that button below that is to subscribe to me. You should also do that if you want to see more scuba diving videos like this. Anyway, divers, have been awesome and safe dives. I'm going to see you all in the next video. Bye bye.